Hi there, welcome back to the Warlock's Tower. So this is going to be my first tactics video. Now, admittedly, this isn't based on a huge amount of tournament wins and ego building stuff like that, but it's based on quite a lot of years of wargaming experience and a lot of using apparently quirky lists. I don't like to follow the net list. I own an Eldar army which is pretty net listy and pretty nails and feels like playing hobby on easy mode. So I've switched to using the orcs, and yeah, so I started watching a lot of tactics YouTube channels, and I kind of followed a little bit of their advice in the early days, and then I looked at it from my usual wargaming perspective and found that a lot of the information didn't agree with my rationale behind it. Now, this comes down to my view on wargaming, which is kind of based around the meta, or to put it another way, on problem solving. What's your opponent going to take, and how do you counter that? And how do you counter it in a points effective way? I think it's mainly listening to Dan Heelan of Heelan Hammer fame. He always says if there's something in the list that answers a question, even if it's not points effective, if it's the only thing that answers that problem from your army book, then you just got to take it. And I think that's the way I've kind of approached wargaming since my days in Warhammer Fantasy Battle. That yeah, you've got to look at problems and you've got to look at how to solve them. So I thought about the list that I was facing, predominantly at tournaments where lists were that bit tougher, and I came across several things. One is your very high armor value, armor 14 or toughness 8 plus models, so monstrous creatures and super heavy vehicles. Now, they are very destructive models. They are often the model that an army's tactics are guided around. They just put a ton of points and often a ton of effort and money into this model, and they're going to make it work. And that takes backing it up with a Farseer, if that takes putting terrain in front of it to make it work, then so be it. So to my mind, super heavies and those big monstrous creatures, whether Tau or Eldar, are a big problem, and so there's something you need to counter. If you don't counter them, they're going to run riot through your army and they're going to make a mess. So that's something we need to think about countering. Second, we need to think about countering a horde. So, okay, they're not a massive problem in 40k, but if you come across that Tyrannid horde, Imperial Guard, Blob Squad, how are we going to counter that? How are we going to chew through it fast enough that we can gain the points we need? Now, on from that, if we're going to gain the points we need, we're going to have to probably get objectives, and we're probably going to have to get change in objectives. There's more than likely to either be a Maelstrom component to the game, or even if you're just playing Eternal War and you've got to grab those objectives at the end, then you're going to have fast units. You're going to have units that you can get across the table and hold those objectives. And I think in the battle report with Glenn, I mean, that was his problem, that he was left with Wolfen and Marines who just couldn't get across the table, couldn't hold those objectives. So yeah, I'll put a link to that battle report in the show notes. To a lesser extent, I think flyers can be a problem. So they can, if you've got nothing that can deal with flyers, it just allows your opponents to just hang around, to just cause you problems. And so possibly with the flyer codex coming out, we might see a surge in flyers. Now, all of this is to be taken with a pinch of salt. Obviously, new codexes are coming out all the time, new formations, and maybe the meta will shift. Maybe something will be a hard counter to knights, which everybody takes, and therefore knights disappear off the table. But I think at the moment, particularly those high armor value things are a major problem every time I turn up. And even high armor value, say Imperial Guard tanks, Land Raiders, those things that just are a problem to deal with. On top of that, obviously, There's so many models hanging around in power armor or the like 3-up or even 2-up armor saves that they are a big problem. Having something which can deal with those high armor value armor save models, especially in bulk, like Marines. Okay, they're not Imperial Guardsmen; they're expensive, but you can still get them on the table in significant numbers, and you can move them around the table with whether it be rhinos or chucking them in the drop pods for enough of them to cause a problem. So yeah, we need to be able to chew through armor as well. Now, all the videos I've seen talk very highly of the Orc Boy. Now, I can understand this. They do have a good stat line. They are low points. You can tool them up to do several things reasonably well. So they can take tank killing items, they can take infantry killing shooting, they can take a close combat preference, and they can take a knob with a power claw. Now, a knob with a power claw was my star player when I ran Orc Boys. That basically, and this is what a lot of tactics videos I think quite rightly say, the Orc Boys are a power claw delivery system. Your one knob in the army, in the unit with the power claw is great. He runs in, he smashes up an opponent, chews through a few Marines, chews through a few hull points on a vehicle or a few wounds on a knight, while the unit try and keep him alive. So yeah, he's very useful. So yeah, there's nothing wrong with an Orc Boy stat line, apart from one thing. As soon as your strength drops off after your charge, if you get to charge, then you've got real problems. I think strength 4 even isn't great when you think if you go into a unit of Marines with a unit of say 10 boys, apart from the power claw, you do almost no wounds, and that's with effectively close combat only unit. So yeah, you've got a bit of a problem there. Their shooting obviously is numerous, but is not great. So yeah, I'm not a massive fan of the Orc Boy. I can see why he's tempting with a good stat line within the troops choice and for low points, but they're not mobile. Okay, you can chuck them in a truck, and that's cheap, but trucks are fairly fragile, can be taken out by bolts of fire, or they're open tops and they blow up pretty easily. So yeah, there tends to be a problem that if you've built your truck boys to go and grab objectives, the opponent will spot that pretty quickly and they'll take out the truck from underneath them, and then they're stuck walking, and then they're a small unit walking, or you take them as a huge squad, at which point you spend all the game running towards the objective and not actually holding the objective. The other option that I've often heard talked about and seems to be very, very popular, and again I can fully see why, is the knob in Mega Armor. Yes, they are solid. Yes, they are hard to kill. Stick them in a battle wagon and they'll hang around all day. But there are a lot of points. Your opponent will have some strength high AP to weaponry somewhere, and they'll make a mess of them. Yeah, they shoot pretty well. Yeah, they chop up a lot in combat with those power claws. But they can only be in one place at one time. They rely on their battle wagon to get them somewhere, and the battle wagon will be shot out from under them. If you're running towards an Eldar Knight with some Mega Armor knobs to get those power claws in there and chop up the Eldar Knight or the Imperial Knight, that model will take out your battle wagon in short order and leave your very expensive unit just walking around, and at that point they don't have a need to shoot them probably. They can only hold one objective. They can probably by turn 3, if you're lucky, be charging a unit, as long as the army's not all Eldar jet bikes or something and getting out of the way. So either the army might be able to shoot them off the table just through weight of firepower, or you're going to struggle to get them in combat. So I've got a 2-step solution to these problems. Now, I think you can't argue with a war boss with a lucky stick. I think Pain Boys are great. That Feel No Pain is awesome. And I think this army maximizes the use of those two guys. I've been now thought about it, and I'm going to run it as a double CAD. So instead of the war boss being in charge with the lucky stick, he's going to be in a separate CAD. So there's going to be two choices: a Pain Boy and a war boss. And then there's going to be my warlord, who's going to be a warlock boss with the less than popular thinking cap. Now, there's a reason for this, which we'll come to. So they'll be in the main CAD with the majority of the army. Now, that leaves the troops choice as a relatively obvious decision if you're not taking boys. So Gretchen, much derided and understandably so. They can shoot straight for greenskins, but they don't shoot with any range and they don't shoot with any strength. So they're going to be doing a limited amount of damage. But for their points, they've got effectively a really high leadership because they've got a runt herd and he's got a squig hound. So for 40 points, you get 11 wounds. Okay, no saving throw, low toughness. But if people are shooting you Gretchen, you're winning all day because do you care about losing Gretchen? There's two ways that I think these guys work best. So as I say, I'm going to take double CAD. That means I end up with 4 units of Gretchen. Now, I then take an Aegis defense line. So that low save suddenly becomes a really good save. They can sit behind that. I don't care about their shooting. I just want them to sit on objectives in my or near my deployment zone. So I want them to be able to run out and get objectives if they're near my deployment zone, and if they die, so be it. Or I want them just to sit behind the defense line and score me a couple of Maelstrom cards or Eternal War cards if that's so be it. So they're going to sit behind the Aegis defense line. They're going to go to ground almost every time they get shot at. If the enemy wants to put firepower or even better, close combat power into them, then great. What I've found is people will get near them with close combat units and not worry about the countercharge. Now, actually, if you get 10 grots and a runt herd charging you, that's still 22, 23 attacks. It's a lot, and they'll chip off a wound from a Space Marine unit potentially. They'll certainly go into a 5-man squad and chip off a wound. They'll probably survive the attacks coming at them. Well, they've almost paid for themselves with one Space Marine. They'll often run into a unit of wolves or something similar, and I expect them to win combat. And people don't expect you to charge because they're only Gretchen. But suddenly, that doubling up of attacks with the charge bonus just makes them really, really quite dangerous. So I've got a load of forest goblins in my snake bites, which I'm using as Gretchen, and I think they're just great models for the purpose. The other thing I do is I take a fast attack truck, put a unit in there, and then they can run around and take some objectives. And they're as useful for that almost as boys. They can shoot out the top of the open top truck. Yeah, they can't shoot very well, but they can shoot. But they can move forward, take an objective with their troops. Perfect. And they're cheap. They're half the points of the Orc boys, and they fulfill that role really nicely. So what to do to kill those high toughness models, what to do to kill those flyers. And the solution comes in one form, and that form works really well for my snake bites because I take a lot of Savage Orc Ball Boys and I use them as knob bikers. Now, to my mind, I can see why people use bikers, but again, biker boys and boys are a power claw delivery system. There's a heap of numbers there to deliver the one guy, the knob, and or the war boss with the power claw. Now, to my mind, it's much better to take 7, 8 knob bikers. Now, yes, they're expensive. With a power claw and a bike, they're really expensive. When I've seen them tooled up before, it tends to be every guy in the unit has a power claw, and I think I'm legit in saying that it's not everyone who has to take a power claw. So take 2 or 3 guys, stick them at the front or wherever the shooting is coming from, and let them weather the storm. Even better, if there's no strength D or strength 10 coming in, stick your lucky stick guy at the front and let him weather the storm. The reason I'm taking the War Boss with the thinking cap is basically for survivability. You're over 50% likely, if I've done my maths right, 55% around, to get the stealth ruins and move through ruins. Most Warhammer boards I've seen in bat reps and in my experience have quite a bit of ruins lying around the place, so you can whiz through the ruins without dangerous terrain tests and then stop in the ruins. This means if you jink, you get your 4 up. If you flat out it, which if you're delivering power claws, great, flat out, that's all good. You don't need to shoot. And you go to a 3 up, 2 up cover save for being in ruins with your stealth ruins and jinking, so that's pretty decent. If not, you get a 5 up for ruins if you don't want to jink and you do want to shoot. So yeah, it adds on really well. So the going flat out with a bought bike automatically adds +1 to your cover save, so suddenly the decent armor value of 4+ becomes a really good potentially cover save of 2+. So either way, it's a pretty survivable unit. They've got 2 wounds each, they're toughness 10, so they're only being auto killed by strength D, strength 10. They should have a pain boy in any big size unit, so I take 3 units, but if you take 2 units you can put a pain boy in there, so they're almost always getting their feel no pain as well, so they're really tough to shift. Toughness 5 makes them just so hard to kill, and they're a scary unit. They're kicking out an awful lot of attacks, and on the charge, strength 10, AP 2, it's chewing through most things pretty quickly. With their mobility, you can shift them off to one side, so you can attack the point of the unit that you want to attack, or the enemy unit you want to attack. If it's a really spread out unit, that means that the guys who you don't want to fight aren't stepping up into combat. So yeah, that side of things is really good. On top of that, the Daka guns, the twin link Daka guns, are really great. Even if you're snap firing, you go from hitting on 5s to hitting on 6s with a reroll because of the twin linked. Strength 5 will deal with light flyers, so you can do a wheelie, presumably fire them into the air, and you can still clip those flyers and take them out of the air. It's just a weight of fire thing, really. And so they deal with those things really well. Light vehicles as well, they get chewed through fairly fast. I play Dark Eldar quite frequently, and those light, pesky vehicles that zoom around, cause you problems, don't become so much of a problem. Forces Eldar jet bikes to jink, but most importantly, they are not just a delivery system for power claws, they are massive amounts of power claws. They'll fight almost anything, they'll auto kill almost anything, including on the charge those tough as Thunderwolf Cav. So yeah, they're a great unit. I think most people have stuck away from them, and they need, in my experience, to be used in numbers. So yeah, comment below if you agree, and definitely comment below if you disagree. Get in touch through the contact form on Warlock's Tower. I'm available on Twitter and on Facebook. So let me know what you think. Talk to you soon. Bye.